Hello, everyone. This is our first screencast for week number 9, and we're looking at the microbiome. And this is just a very cursory overview because I'm not a microbiologist. You're not wanting to come to school to be a microbiologist. But I really think this is a fascinating area, an area that we should continue to learn more about. Obviously, there are researchers doing that, but as physical therapists, we should have an understanding of this, have an understanding about the potential role that our microbiome has on the health of our patients, or how it potentially contributes to the health of our patients. So the human microbiome, important role in maintenance and development of the human body, and some of the things that it's responsible for include the immune system, affecting inflammatory homeostasis and immune regulation in neonates and young children. And as you'll see that there are potentially many more roles. Again, it's being researched by many people, and it's really fascinating, the relationship between gut dysbiosis, which we'll define later, and abnormal states of health. So our gut contains 10 times more cells and 100 to 150 times more genes than the whole body. So it's basically a second genome within us. 3 in 4 Americans have digestive dysfunction. One of the most common ones is irritable bowel syndrome. 1 in 5 people or more experience this. Women are 1.5 to 3 times more likely than men. And what's interesting on top of that is a large number of individuals with IBS also have psychiatric disorders. We'll illustrate in just a bit that role between the gut and the brain, or that relationship. All humans share about 99.9% of the same human DNA, but no one shares the same microbiome. Our gut is host to 100 trillion bacteria. Over 1,300 bacterial species have been identified. Each individual hosts approximately about 160 unique species, with 90% coming from, and I'll probably pronounce these incorrectly, so Bacteroidetes or Bacteroidetes and Firmicutes. From now on, I'll just say the F bacteria and the B bacteria. Now, our goal is to have a certain F to B ratio. Why is that? Well, some studies have illustrated if there's an abnormal ratio, so a higher F to B relationship, those individuals are more likely to be obese than individuals who are at a normal weight. So this is looking like a potential biomarker. Could it be that if you see this in a patient, not us, but if somebody were to test this in a patient, that this could be then used to prescribe a certain diet or a certain set of supplements? And again, the F and B bacteria can make up 90% of the bacteria found in the colon. Now, is the F bacteria bad? Not necessarily. Researchers aren't suggesting that it is inherently bad. It is an abnormal relationship between the F and the B that's potentially bad. So what foods fuel the F bacteria? Well, typically the foods that you like fuel it. Pizza, pasta, bread, sugary sodas, things like that, high sugar types of things, ultra processed things, those things will fuel it. And what we can see off to the right-hand side are just a few studies illustrating the abnormal ratio and potential role it has on health. So looking at gallstone disease and obesity, possible role there with major depressive disorder, and as a risk factor for those with breast cancer or for the development of breast cancer. In addition, other studies have shown relationships between higher ratios of the F bacteria in diseases like type 1, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, some cancers, Alzheimer's, and obesity. And what's interesting is if you compare individuals that live in the Western world versus other parts of the world, usually those of us in the Western world have a higher F to B ratio. Again, the microbiome is a metabolically active area. It is involved in a lot of things, a lot of important things for our body. One I want to highlight because I kind of talked about it a little bit, but didn't put too much time into it during the diet section and looking at lipids, are the short-chain fatty acids. This is a metabolite produced by our microbiota. It's produced in the large intestine, and the SCFAs, the short-chain fatty acids, they are created by the fermentation of dietary fiber and starches. And so why that's important, it has a role in protecting the colon, so reducing the risk of colon cancer. If you also look at other roles for short-chain fatty acids, they are thought to have a role in the gut-brain communication that occurs, or even have a direct function or direct role in brain function. Ever heard this saying, I've got a gut feeling, or I feel it in my gut? Maybe it has something to do with this. When we're in a dysbiotic state, there is inadequate production of the serotonin and dopamine neurotransmitters. And research has shown links between gut dysbiosis and the inflammatory response that is known to contribute to depression, anxiety, and schizophrenia. So, what do we need to do to feed our gut the right way? Well, there are prebiotics and probiotics. Probiotics per WebMD listed here, things that have bacterial cultures in them. Yogurt, sauerkraut, miso soup, soft cheeses, kefir, and you see the rest there. All these things could be healthy options to include in our diet. So what is gut dysbiosis? Dysbiosis is the term describing a disruption of the microbiome resulting in an imbalance in the microbiota, creating these changes in the functional composition and metabolic activities that occur. Is there a normal or healthy microbiota composition? The answer to that is not sure. Probably you have to look at an individual's symptoms. Each individual is provided with a unique gut microbiota profile that plays many specific functions in host nutrient metabolism, maintenance of structural integrity of the gut mucosal barrier, immunomodulation, and protection against pathogens. So probably it's an understanding of that F to B ratio, and if an individual is experiencing any symptoms. We'll see an example of that in a little bit. Here is just a kind of interesting breakdown of different phylum of bacteria, class, order, family. If you took any type of biology class, you've seen stuff like this. So this is just illustrating some of the richness that's out there. And again, 90% comes from the F and the B bacteria. So we want to be eating things that provide fuel for our microbiome. That's the prebiotics, right? Those provide those health benefits. Again, sources of fiber, starchy foods. So we're getting things from a lot of vegetables, things like that. Probiotics, this is where we're taking in different microbes and potentially providing some diversity to our microbiome. Are probiotic supplements good? Sometimes you hear people talk about, oh, if you just buy those supplements off the shelf, they're just going to be making expensive urine. So there is evidence that supports probiotics to ameliorate intestinal dysbiosis, and probiotics have been shown to improve the intestinal barrier, stimulate the immune system, and produce antibacterial effects, alongside modulating intestinal motility and reducing visceral pain. So your probiotics, again, can come from food sources, but supplements can also be a potentially good source. Are there tests out there to assess your microbiome? Now, most of the time, doctors and primary care providers don't check for dysbiosis. This is, I think, a growing field. There's a growing recognition about its importance, but I've not had offered to me, hey, do you want to have your microbiome tested? That has not been offered by my medical provider. I'd be curious to know if anybody in class has had theirs been tested. And some or maybe most MDs don't really know if there is a clinical value. None of the tests that are out there on the market apparently have been validated for their utility in assessing overall gut health. None are FDA approved. So what do? They test a stool sample. It reveals the type of microbes in your GI tract. It does not diagnose anything, though. Now, we've talked about this a lot, ultra-processed foods, and how 60, 70% of an individual's diet in the United States comes from these foods. And what's in these foods? Food additives, for example, sweeteners, colors, microparticles, nanoparticles. There's a variety of things in them in this processing process. Ultra-processed foods cause inflammation. They're related to a variety of diseases. And there is, again, that concern that the ultra-processed foods affect our gut. Now, in number one here, this is a normal host microbiota interaction. And what I want to highlight to you is these areas here. If we're looking along these cells, are there open areas?